Globalization refers to the shift towards a more integrated and interdependent world economy. Globalization has several facets, including globalization of product and globalization of markets. This is a quote from a textbook entitled Global Business Today, which is from one of my business classes that I'm currently taking. The quote really stood out to me because it helps us conclude that there are many different things within globalization that has made it such a big step for our global business. Globalization has expanded our economy in many different ways. There are many disadvantages and advantages that have resulted from globalization. Don't worry, I'm not going to persuade you to dislike or like globalization, but the impact it has had on our global economy that affects many different things in our daily lives and needs to be addressed. I started researching globalization for one of my business classes, which is why I feel confident in the subject and why I chose it for this speech. Globalization impacts many different characteristics that involve the global economy. The future impacts that this may have on the United States as an economy may influence you in many different ways. Globalization affects people daily due to the changes it's made in the business around the world, including trade, jobs, etc. Let's discuss how globalization has been an advantage for American businesses as well as a disadvantage. More specifically, we will be discussing disadvantages and advantages such as careers, manufacturing, and foreign trade. There are many different concepts to each advantage and disadvantage, but we will only discuss a few of the major pros and cons of globalization and the most commonly known. The easy access to do business around the world has hurt the U.S. and its businesses in many different ways. According to the textbook from my global business class entitled Global Business Today, one concern associated with globalization are the falling trade barriers to international trade and how that might be the reason why manufacturing jobs are being destroyed in the United States. They claim that other employers are paying other employees in different countries to do the same labor for a cheaper cost. This can be seen as both an advantage and disadvantage depending on which standpoint you're at. Manufacturing jobs have been affected greatly due to the expansion of globalization. Jobs in the manufacturing industry have been cut due to the labor in other countries being less, as discussed previously. This brings a great advantage to some businesses, there are many different reasons why it is an advantage and why it's a disadvantage. Seeing it as an advantage may seem very unethical, but there are many different, it just depends on the standpoint from where you're looking. According to Global Business Today, critics argue that falling trade barriers allow firms to move manufacturing job activities to countries where wage rates are much lower. So this gives a lot of credibility towards the fact that manufacturing jobs are being lost in the United States and it needs to be addressed. Unemployment is a very big problem in the United States, which is why this causes a big political statement. First, globalization means the economic activity flows in both directions. Although we may lose jobs to foreign workers, we also may gain jobs and boost economic activity. An article found when researching this topic states that between 1991 and 2001, United States-based multinationals created close to 3 million jobs and jobs overseas. But they also created 5.5 million jobs inside the United States, which is an increase of about 30% in payrolls. That's significantly fast at a faster rate of job growth than purely domestic companies generated. Jobs overseas are increasing while the U.S. is losing jobs around the country, which causes major problems within global business, which is why many critics love globalization and why many critics also hate it. Globalization has impacted the economy in many different ways, especially for American businesses, as we discussed. Jobs may have been lost, but economic power was given in return when you think about it. There are many different factors when it comes to globalization, which is why it's hard to determine whether the advantages outweigh the disadvantages. But next we will discuss globalization and the impact it has on trade. There are many factors that can pertain to this century's advanced international trade market. Trade can affect many different aspects throughout the economy, including competition within a business, movement of goods, as well as revenue within a business. Each aspect has disadvantages and advantages. Most advantages seem to outweigh the bad when it comes to the trade aspect of globalization. The expansion of the trade network has brought many arisals, including advantages and disadvantages. The main expansion of the trade network has become global marketing, which makes it very easy for the U.S. to do business with other countries around the world. And we can thank globalization for that. Globalization has benefited trade in many different ways. Although there are many advantages, there are also many disadvantages that the open free trade market has brought. According to Mercer Law Review, increased globalization in trade means the movement of goods and commodities to virtually anywhere in the world. The benefits of trade can also cause negative effects of the free trade process due to the factors of impediments. Impediments are problems that are unplanned problems that are arrived during production of a product or during shipment. In such scenarios, missed or delayed shipments involve critical components in their supply chain and may result in damaging financial loss, strained business relationships, and project failure. Companies face much greater competition, and this can put smaller companies at a disadvantage as they do not have resources to compete at a global scale. As discussed, the trade market is a very advanced market in today's world, especially due to the arrival that globalization has pushed for it. Globalization is the reason why trade has become so international and easy to conduct. Competition makes entrepreneurship harder. Trade will bring problems along the road of success and better quality products for being cheaper prices. It seems as though globalization is helping us in many different ways more than not helping us. Like anybody, I would like to sustain a progressing economy that includes all of the advantages of globalization. Reducing the disadvantages that globalization has on the global economy, especially the U.S., should be something that everyone strives for. Globalization and the decline for trade barriers have expanded our access to international business, which was a major upgrade in the world when it comes to global economy and specifically American businesses. We've been moving away from a world in which national economies were relatively self-contained entities, isolated from each other by barriers to cross-border trade and investment, by distance, time zones, and languages, and by differences in government regulation, culture, and business systems.